Jay, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Welcome to your audience.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you got a crazy story of what's happened in the last couple of decades, and it's fascinating to hear, and just the amount of times you've put your life at risk, and to share that story into the world. I want to go over kind of the beginnings of your career as an undercover agent, but I'm more curious to know, like, how did you even decide, what motivated you to become an undercover agent?
Yeah, I landed in law enforcement because of failure. To be quite honest with you, I had always dreamed and planned to be a professional football player. I played football in college. I had a successful college career, and I've never had a plan B. I never had alternative or escape routes for my plans. I still don't. So I got out of college and I thought I was going to play pro football, and I went through all the testing combines, and I realized I wasn't as good as I thought I was.
Hmm.
It wasn't going to happen, so my dreams crashed as a very young man, at 21, 22 years old, and my dreams crashed, and I didn't know what else. I never thought about doing anything else. And so at the time, as hokey as it sounds, the television show Miami Vice was very popular. This is the mid-'80s. And as an audience, we had never seen a police show quite like that. Everything had been very procedural. Cops in uniforms, driving squad cars, or detectives showing up at crime scenes with their notebooks and interviewing witnesses and piecing together the puzzle. And then Miami Vice shows up. Sonny Crockett's riding around South Beach with a Hugo Boss suit on and a shoulder rig and driving a Ferrari Spider and dealing with cartel kingpins. And I was like, man, you know what? Man, I'm not going to be good enough to be a football player on the level I want to be, but I can do this. And so I started chasing a new plan
Gotcha. And those are back then when people were trying to catch like weed dealers, right? Was it like cocaine back in those days?
It was, that the show was based, in South Florida. And so Pablo's operations were really hot and heavy with the cocaine cowboys. I wasn't in South Florida. I was in Arizona, but our problem was evolving. It wasn't to the point that it is now with the Mexican cartels. But it's still, been a never-ending problem on the border here in Arizona with gun and drug trafficking.
Right. So for people, I should just give you an intro of your background for people that don't know. So you've done 27 years of doing of working with as being a special agent undercover, where you've put your life in danger of getting into different situations, whether it's gun bartering or getting into the Hells Angels. What are some other cases that you've been through that people can know about?
I was an undercover agent for 27 years before I retired. I was involved in over 500 undercover operations during my career. So everything from street corner dope to cartel dope. Everything from pea shooter Saturday night specials to shoulder launch rocket launchers. Everything from PVC pipe bombs that some tweaker was making on his workbench in his garage, up to servo-activated remote control C4 devices, home invasion crews, murder for hire schemes, playing a hitman, gang infiltrations.
What were you doing for murder for hires? Like, what was your role there?
I played the role of a hitman. I had a kind of an ongoing persona over the time. I always played this kind of white trash, gun running, debt collector hitman, and I could plug and play that. But it didn't matter who the suspect was. It didn't matter if I was dealing with white collar criminals or traditional street gang members. I could always make that work. I could sell it.
Right. And your football background and being the way you've built obviously helps with being able to play that persona, I imagine.
I think it did. I think the athletics like being involved in team sports, like having to sacrifice individually for the greater good, the toughness that is built with football. I think those things all contributed to ultimately to what my success might have been.
Yeah. I think people, from like a mainstream media perspective, they understand like movies like 21 Jump Street, with Channing Tatum, but that is nothing compared to the stuff that you've been through. So let's get to it, because obviously the most publicized undercover stunt that you did was infiltrating the Hells Angels for 2 years. I think in 2001, you were the first ever person to kind of defeat the gang's multi-layered security. No one has been able to do it before. Why do you think the ATF, the government agency, decided to assign you particularly into doing this case?
Yeah, that's a good question. The case started, the concept of the case started because the Hells Angels in Arizona were really operating violently and with impunity. There wasn't a lot of oversight on them, and they had really were going wild.
What are some examples?
Just guns and drugs and murders and rapes and extortions and prostitution and arsons and you name it. That you name the violent crime, they had fingers in it. Mm-hmm. When the decision was made to run a covert operation on them, I was approached to lead the undercover team, and to be quite honest, I was hesitant to do it because I told the case agent, I can name 15 people off the top of my head who will probably serve you better in the role that you need for this case. I was not a biker investigator. The things that I did touched on the periphery of that world, but there was undercover agents and operatives all around the country who specialized in outlaw motorcycle gangs, who I thought would probably do a better job on the case. But the case agent convinced me to try. I was never the best undercover operator. There's many that I know and admire who I feel are better at it than me. I was always willing. I was always willing to raise my hand and take on dangerous assignments or impossible assignments or assignments that other people wanted to pass on. I was always willing. I was never, I wasn't afraid to fail. I was afraid not to try.
Right. And you had a good amount of experience at this to be able to do something like this. I mean, would you say that being able to infiltrate in this case that was assigned to you is reserved for more of the senior undercover agents that, because no one has infiltrated them before, right?
Yeah, that case was not one that you want to walk out of the academy and try to take on. Yeah. You develop your skills and your expertise and your trade craft over time. When the opportunity for the Hells Angels case was presented to me, I already had 15 years of undercover work under my belt. So I had a head start, and it probably still wasn't enough, to be quite honest with you. I probably still needed more. But it's definitely not a case that you would want to put a rookie or someone who had yet to develop like their comfort and confidence in their role. You wouldn't want to put them into that situation too quickly.
Yeah. So how do you even get started in this? So you get assigned this case, and what was the reasoning for them to, for someone to be on the inside? Was it for a big mission that they were trying to stop? Yeah.
Well, I think, undercover work, I don't think, I know. Undercover work is really nothing more than a tool in an investigator's toolbox. There's all kinds of options available to a case agent and to an investigator, from like the very most traditional techniques where you react to a crime scene. And there's like the CSI type forensic investigation. There's historical investigations where you build a history and a pattern of criminal activity for an individual or an organization. There's surveillance, interviews, informants, wiretaps. All those things are tools within an investigator's toolbox. Undercover work is just one of those tools.
Yeah.
So when it was decided that that would be the approach, in my mind, and I'm biased because I did it for so long, I think undercover work is the best tool because you're putting a living, breathing, sworn law enforcement officer right next to your suspects. So that person can see and hear and touch and feel and experience the crimes. Sometimes real time, sometimes they can get in advance on what might be happening, or they can backtrack and ask questions about what has happened. The drama in it and why it's actually a dying art is because there's so much liability for the agencies and for the departments. They're taking a living, breathing asset and putting it in harm's way.
Yeah.
So less and less people want to do it, and less agencies are comfortable allowing people to do it.
Yeah. Listen, for good reason. I mean, particularly, I imagine when cases like yours have come out to the public, I would imagine it's even harder. I mean, it's probably infinitely harder. And the layers of security for these gangs or anything like that has, I imagine, increased exponentially after cases like this.
There are so many publicized gang infiltrations and undercover operations. They're in the movies, they're in the television documentaries, and it is. I think it's much harder to be an undercover agent or officer right now in today's world than it was for me, and it only gets harder.
Yeah. Yeah, especially with social media and the amount of information that's out there, like it's virtually impossible. But I see the benefit of it because there are certain things, I imagine the gap between what is heard in the media or what the front person of, let's say, the Hells Angels or whichever other gangs will tell you versus what, the person that's actually has been there and you're able to have beers with them or you're able to really get to know that person is fundamentally different because even they may not even know, the people that are actually telling the media may not even, tell the, other people around it.
There's fewer and fewer agents and officers, and there's fewer and fewer departments and agencies that are willing to take on undercover cases. And I understand the reasons. I don't always agree with them, but I do understand the logic behind it.
Right.
And it's just more and more difficult. With every new story told is a new piece of information or intelligence for the criminal community to be on the lookout for.
Sure. Now, given the liability that comes with being able to infiltrate, such a multi-layered security gang like the Hells Angels, where your life is obviously at risk, right? I mean, I can't even imagine or fathom the things that could have happened if you were caught in the scene. And imagine it's not something you even want to, imagine yourself. So what is the level of training and preparation? Not just learning about the ins and outs about what they're doing, but the psychological and the emotional training. Is there anything around that, a procedure around that for you?
There is. I mean, and that's a good point, and it's a huge point, is that the mindset, it starts with the mindset. Undercover work is not for everybody. And you're no lesser of a lawman or woman or investigator if it's not for you. It's just not for everybody. There's people that try it that don't like it. There's people that try it and they're not good at it. But then there's people that they try it, they're good at it, they love it, and they continue to build their trade craft and their expertise. And
yeah. So is there anything that the agency provides for you from a training perspective that helps you with being confronted, let's say, or helps you become harder to read? Because I imagine the moment that you do something wrong, if you're in a case and they corner you and you flinch at something that they say, like, that's it, right? Like small things like that.
Yeah, our training, we get exposed to undercover operations at our academy. We have like a small window of time within our training that teaches new agents how undercover operations, the mechanics of how they work. It lets agents kind of test themselves a little bit in a training environment to see if they have an inclination for it. The truth of it is it's baby steps and it's trial by fire. There's continued training, but really you get out, hopefully you land with a good training officer, a good agent or officer that can mentor you, and then you start small. You don't go and do your first deal with Pablo Escobar or El Chapo. Your first deal is probably a bag deal weed out in the park. You start small and you start building those skills and building that rapport and gaining comfort and confidence in the persona that you're portraying and that you're playing. And then as you do it more and more, when you do something right, it enhances your confidence and it empowers you. And when you do things wrong and make mistakes, you have to be self-critical and say, man, I'm not going to say or do that again because it doesn't work.
Now, from the moment that you said you were ready to trying to get into the gang, what is the procedure? Who do you contact and what do you say? Like what are all of these intricacies that people probably just don't know about?
Well, in a lot of cases, informants are used. We also use cold knock techniques where we just self-introduce an undercover to an individual or to an organization. But like in the Hells Angels case, you don't go to a clubhouse and knock on the door and ask for an application.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way in any criminal organization. It takes time, and it's like any relationship. You have to have exposure and time, and then as you build your associations, you start to build friendships. And as you build friendships, you build trust. And as you build trust, then you build loyalty. And then sometimes if you go far enough, you actually build love. You find love in people. There's the human factor is very much a part of it. And so sometimes it goes faster than others. Sometimes it's very quick. Sometimes it's very tedious trying to climb that ladder. There's no one set example or answer to that.
Now, in your particular case, how long did it take from the introduction to them officially accepting you into the group?
Well, from the very beginning, there's various stages, like in a biker thing. So it's not like you go from a cold outsider to all of a sudden you're a member. You go through various stages. But that case, from beginning to end, lasted 2 years.
2 years. Oh my God.
Years, day in, day out, like 14, 16, 18-hour days, day after day, month after month, like having to stay within that lot.
And I don't understand what you were doing during that time. Are you meeting with them every day and they're taking you through like ride-alongs and things without officially welcoming you into the group, but you're actually just, doing what you would be?
Yeah, pretty much. Some of it you're just hanging out and you're getting to know people. Sometimes you're involved in criminal activity with them. Sometimes you're just in conversation. But it was nonstop for me. It was nonstop.
It's almost like every day they would call you up. Let's meet here. We're going to do this and that.
Yeah, and there's so many people, like, in a large organization, you're meeting with a lot of different people. So you're one person, and if let's say there was at that time 100 Hells Angels in Arizona, it takes a while to meet and get to know and gain the trust of 100 different potential suspects.
Right.
Some of which I was more successful with than others.
Sure. So is it like fraternities where there's chapters amongst different cities? You've got, maybe a dozen or 100 members in each city, and then there's like a headquarters?
Not so much a headquarters, but there are different groups, different charters, different chapters in different places within the state, different places within the country.
Yeah.
Hundreds, literally hundreds of chapters or charters scattered all over the place that
Sure.
kind of all have their own personality. They form their own little clique of their brotherhood, and they develop their own personalities and their own styles and what they do or don't do criminally, and like what their kind of just what the vibe is, what they're about. And they're all different, but they're kind of all the same.
Sure. Yeah. No, I get it. I totally get it. I was part of a, not to say this is the same, but I was certainly, I was a part of a fraternity where you've got certain values and the things that you've been taught, and you eventually start to mold your character a little bit when you're around these people. But at the end of the day, these are individual human beings that have their own backgrounds, their own histories, their own insecurities, their own motivations. And I think that's an interesting point, is like for someone that is interested, like the typical person, what is their incentive? What is their motivation for wanting to be in association like this, where obviously the downsides is like you could literally die at any moment because there's rival gangs, or you're putting yourself in danger. So what is the upside from your perspective?
Well, go back to the first part of that statement. And typically, like anybody in the criminal community or otherwise, we're a reflection of the people that we surround ourselves with. That's just for all of us in society. I think not just for the Hells Angels, but for any criminal organization, for any gang, typically the members, they want to belong to that family. They want that sense of being a part of something. And it's not just gangs, it could be any club, it could be any organization. It's a sports team.
Yeah.
The same things fit with a sports team. The same things fit in certain businesses. People want to be a part of it. And so it's choices. What are those choices that you make with your life? Like, who do you want to be? Who do you want to surround yourself with? People that chase gang life. They want the security, the protection, the loyalty, the brotherhood of the gang. Sometimes the financial side that comes along with being a member of a gang, the doors that are open, the power, the influence, the intimidation that sometimes comes with gangs in the criminal world. But is it any different if you're a businessman and you're out there shopping for your job with Fortune 500 companies or Fortune 50 companies? They're looking like, who can I join up with that is going to be best for me, that's going to give me the most power, the most influence, that's going to elevate my life.
Got it.
So,
yeah, no, I agree. And I think people like to separate it completely just because of, obviously, the violence and the things that are incited from being an organization. But from an infrastructure perspective, it's not that much different, right?
There's a hierarchy to it, and it's like the Angels hierarchy is not all that much unlike like a traditional organized crime hierarchy. When you think about it, the way that these gangs are structured aren't structured all that much different than the military or a big business.
Yeah.
You have a CEO, you have a kingpin, you have a shot call, and then underneath him are street bosses, and then underneath them are workers. And the tier and the hierarchy and the flow chart of that isn't really all that different, no matter what you're looking at.
Sure. Right. And I guess the difference is that, obviously with employees, you're getting a regular salary and you've got the security level without too much upside. Some people get stocks and some people get options in the company. You mentioned financial incentives amongst, a gang like the Hells Angels. How is that broken down? What are the financial incentives? Is it strictly like a commission base where based on a specific, deal that you do, you get a commission of that? Do you get a salary? Obviously it depends on the rankings, but what's like kind of the overview of that?
Yeah, you're not paid or compensated to be a part of the gang. Now, does your membership within the gang or any gang, does that open doors and create opportunities for whatever the level of crime or whatever the interest of crime you might be chasing is? Of course it does.
Mm.
But there's no, like, you're not getting paid, you're not drawing a salary. Actually, it's a one-way street with the money. Whatever you acquire, whatever you produce, gets kicked up, or at least portions of it get kicked up.
Uh-huh.
So you have people that are big producers and, are reliable to be able to generate income. You get some that are slugs, man, and they never do anything. They don't pull their weight, but it's not like they get fired.
Right, but how do they support themselves? Is it the typical member in the gang? Are they working full-time jobs, like at a corporate office, and then at the nighttime they're serving, what the gangs is doing? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I found that there was no typical member. I ran around with guys that were literally on the verge of homelessness. Like, they were living on the brink of homelessness. There was also guys that had 9-to-5 jobs making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, like in a legitimate job with nice houses and families and wives and kids and everything in between.
Oh my God. And the idea is that it's all a secret, right? So those people that are getting hundreds and thousands of dollars in, let's say, a corporate setting, those people that work for these companies, the companies don't know that they're part of Hell's Angels, I imagine.
Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Like, these guys are not, they're not shy about letting people know who they are or who they're associated with. Mm-hmm. We had one Hell's Angel member that I ran around with was an airlines pilot for a major commercial airline. He was flying commercial jets around the United States. He was a Hell's Angel.
Oh my God. I mean, shouldn't that be public if there's a targeted attack?
I would think that airline, if they had done their due diligence and their background, would have some issues with a member of an international organized crime syndicate flying their jets and putting hundreds of passengers on their plane. But that wasn't my business.
Of course not. Yeah.
I can't tell anybody how to run their company or their business or their life for that matter.
For sure. Now, you mentioned, obviously, some of these guys have full-time jobs or part-time jobs, but obviously there's money to be made by doing certain activities as a member of something like Hell's Angels. Maybe it's changed nowadays, depending on, the legalization of, marijuana and all these different things. But what would you say is like the core activity that brings in the biggest bucks for gangs today in America?
For most gangs in America, it's narcotics. Our country has such an appetite for narcotics, and as long as we do, there's always going to be someone to supply it. There's always going to be producers and traffickers and distributors and users. And until we can get our use issues contained, or I don't think it's possible or controlled. I think the appetite for narcotics is just too big. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't really matter what you legalize. You can legalize marijuana. There are some states that have legalized possession of hard drugs. There's always going to be a black market. There's always going to be someone out there that wants to undercut the legal market and get it to you a little cheaper, a little better, a little different. That's never going to go away.
Yeah. Have you learned a little bit about, as someone that is supplying for those 2 years and being an undercover agent, as someone on the other side of the table, what are some of the things that you've learned about kind of this issue that we have in America and the drug issues that we have? Have you learned anything around what are potential solutions if you were, in someone of power after being on the supply side?
Well, I think it's absolutely devastating to societies, to cultures. I would challenge anybody out there, I mean, anybody, your listeners or anybody else, to name someone who hasn't had narcotics, the world of illegal narcotics touch their life somehow, whether it be a friend or a family member who's locked up, who's currently active, or who's currently or maybe past was addicted. It's touched all of our lives. Everyone knows someone who's been impacted by it.
Yeah.
It's frustrating and it's sad, but it is the reality.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about people that had good paying full-time jobs that started with painkillers, eventually ended up running out of money. And because heroin is less expensive than painkillers, crazy, but it's 10 times more addictive, you're now getting people that had amazing lives that are just out in the streets that know that they're in a situation, but they just can't stop. Like, a lot of these people are aware and they have all the capabilities of getting off the streets, but it's just such a negative cycle.
There's all kinds of introductions into that world. Some are more innocent than others. Someone has an injury and they're prescribed Oxycontin and they don't manage it right and don't handle it right, and they have a continued craving, but aren't able to fulfill it anymore through a legal prescription.
Yeah.
So that's one. Greed is one. There's so much money to be made. Greed, it entices people into that world. There's so many different avenues into that arena, into the narcotics arena. Some are, actually very innocent. Experimental for some people. And there's a lot of drug dealers too, especially with hardcore drugs. If you're interested, that first dose, that first hit, that first sample, it's on the house. But hey, I'm going to give you this one, because they know once you get it, and once you like it, and once you need it, and you crave it, you're going to come back, and then they got you.
Wow, interesting. Yeah, it's a human psychology too, right? You're giving someone something for free, so the other person feels like they owe you something as well, and so they'll come back to you as well.
Well, and then if we'll just use heroin and how addictive heroin is. If you're not a heroin addict, but you're curious about it and you decide you want to try it, you'll find someone out there to give you some for that first try, and then, but then you have to have it. And now that friendship is gone, and now it's like pay or play. Yes.
And did you find that, being in there for 2 years in the Hells Angels, that were you tempted? Were you actually consuming, these hard narcotics, or was it a culture there where it's like, don't get high on your own supply, like only supply, you don't get high on it?
Yeah, there was narcotics around us, all different types, the whole time. I did not use drugs for a lot of reasons. For the moral, ethical reasons, there's a very thick line between what you can and can't do as an undercover operative. When I had the tradecraft and the expertise and the skill to dodge those situations when I was confronted with them.
Got it. But wouldn't that feel fishy if everyone else in the gang is doing it, but you're decided not to? Isn't that actually a liability for you not to be able to do those things?
Yeah, I think that's a logical question, but I think in today's world, what we know about drug use and what it'll do to you, there's a lot of people that don't use drugs. There's a lot of gang members that don't use drugs. Right. I ran around with Hells Angels and members of other gangs who got their rest, drank plenty of water, ate protein 7-8 times a day, went to the gym twice a day, took immaculate care of themselves physically, and they're members of a gang.
Yeah.
It's not like you join a gang and then all of a sudden you're automatically forced into drug use and drug abuse. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. This is what I actually wanted to go into, because obviously there is probably a very misconception about what people think of people that are in gangs. You've been in there for 2 years. I imagine you've developed real relationships. You've developed genuine friendships and people that you have loved and really developed that connection with. Number one, like how difficult was it for knowing that it was a temporary situation, and do you still keep in touch with any of these people after this?
Well, the human factor of undercover work is very difficult. And it's primitive. It's very simple. Is that you spend time with people and you do develop friendships. And the friendships, although they're based behind a lie, like the actual chemistry of them is real. And so you might be running around with someone who's maybe doing things they shouldn't be doing, committing crimes, sometimes violent crimes, sometimes vicious, vile crimes. In that process, you spend time with them when you're with them enough where you actually see elements of their life where they're not doing that. And then along the way, like any group of people, whether it be kids, school, college, work, business, socially, your profession, you meet people that you like, you meet some people you don't like.
Yeah.
If you put like you mentioned your fraternity, if you put 50 fraternity brothers in a fraternity house, their own little cliques aren't going to form there. It's not like there's 50 guys who think and act and live their lives universally the same. You might all be part of that group or that club, but people go their own ways, make their own decisions, and in that, you find people that you grow closer to and that you like more than others.
Yeah.
It's no different. Gang life is no different.
Definitely. Yeah, they're it's such a humans. They're just humans, right? It's such a complicated. Humans are so complicated, right? And you could be looking at someone who is doing something that is, illegal, obviously from a regulation or law perspective, but at the same time they could be, taking care of their daughters. They could taking care of their wives, and they have an enormous love for their friends, and they're a good person in that aspect. It's just that this aspect they're not. I think all of us are in some versions of those of this complicated layer of good and bad.
Well, and so many times, just in real life, like we don't know what's going on with another person. You might think you do, but everybody's got secrets, everybody's got problems, everybody's dealing with their own stress and tension and drama. Maybe you know what it is, maybe you don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Would you say that's the biggest misconception about what the mainstream media or what most people think when they think about, gang members or people that are inside gangs, is that they think they're just like one profile of people, but at the same time, they're really just regular beings. They have full-time jobs. Some people are, yeah.
I think, as society, as the public, we tend to follow stereotypes and paint a group of people all with the same brush based on an event, a story, what information we're given. It's the same thing happens to police officers. The same thing happens to lawmen.
Yeah.
The law enforcement community has been demonized by politicians, by the media, based on some real, tragic, wrong, corrupt, sometimes criminal events that are legitimate occurrences in our world and that are inexcusable. But some people typically want to label every lawman as the same as someone who's gone outside the rules or the lines or the law. And that's not true. That's not the case. But how do you fight it? What do you do about that? Other than just try to, as a cop, try to do your job the best you can every day Can't fight it, can't change that. People are going to look at you as a cop and decide that you're bad, or that you're evil, or that you're corrupt, or that you're racist, or that you're looking for an opportunity to kill people. They're going to view you like that, and all you can do is just try to do your job the best you can.
Yeah, it's complicated.
It's very complicated.
So talk to me about the aftermath. So you've been in the organization for 2 years, and you've developed these loving relationships with the people that are inside these the gangs. What happened after? Did the agency just tell you, listen, like, we've got all the information we need you to get out? Is that what happened?
That's pretty much how any operation ends go, or especially any long term. There's got to be an end game somewhere.
Yeah.
So when a decision is made that enough evidence or information has been acquired to either make arrests, seek indictments, go forward with prosecutions, at some point someone decides enough is enough. And there's some satisfaction and success of having completed a successful investigation. There's also, it's hard because, I never set out to destroy anybody's life, to ruin anybody's life. I never got satisfaction out of sending people to prison. I was there, my job was to get next to violent crime, to see and hear what was going on, experience at times, gather that information, deliver it to prosecutors, who would then present that information before judges and juries to judge these people. I never mocked people that I arrested or had a successful investigation on. Many times, on arrest day, on raid day, I was dealing with them on the very worst day of their life. They didn't need or deserve any additional humiliation for that. People make mistakes. People do things wrong. Sometimes they get caught. And when you do, for all our actions and decisions, there's consequences.
And is that what happened, that these people that you've developed these genuine relationships with, did you have to turn on many of them in the end?
Oh yeah, that's part of the psychology of it. That's difficult as an undercover operator, because you do develop friendships and affection, especially over long-term cases.
Wow.
But you build that trust and loyalty all behind a lie. And you go into the relationship knowing ahead of time that you're going to betray it. That God doesn't make us that way. God doesn't build us that way. To start relationships, and from the point before they even start to know that you're going to ruin that relationship, you're going to betray it. You're going to tell people's dirty secrets. You're going to hang their dirty laundry out for everyone to see. God doesn't build us that way, unless you're a sociopath, and that's part of it. That's if you can't justify that to yourself, if you can't justify that what you're doing is being done, the deceptions you're using are being done for the greater good, then that's not the role you're going to play in an investigation.
Yeah, particularly the role that you're playing, because in order to get the information that you need, I imagine the people that you had to get closest to are the people that you ended up having to get, because basically you're saying, like, you need information, right, in terms of being able to know more about the organization. So you actually had to get closer and spend more time and build those relationships with the people that you knew had that information. So it's almost like a turnaround. Yeah.
Sure, you can't catch sharks with minnows. You don't go fishing for a shark with a minnow. You have to get in the mix, and you have to be attractive bait.
Wow.
And sometimes you have to be their equal, or at least convince them that you are their equal.
That's insane. And how hard is it to resign your membership? Was it at all fishy that all of a sudden for 2 years you said, listen, like, I don't want to be part of a member like this? Is it kind of like the leaving the Scientology church or the Mormon church where they call you every single day and they try to chase you down? Or is it respectful? Is it just like, listen, again, it's not for everyone?
Like in the actual legitimate membership in many gangs, there's some have a blood in, blood out. Like once you're in forever and you can never leave. Some allow members to retire out and retire out in good standing. Some are kicked out if they violate rules and protocols and bylaws. As an agent, as an undercover agent, I reminded myself every day that, whose team I was on. That I was a federal agent, and that I was living a false persona, and that on any given day, if my lie was found to have a crack in it, like these aren't the kind of people that are going to say, hey, we figured out that you've been deceiving us for a couple of years. We prefer that you don't come around here anymore. That's not how they're going to handle it. They're going to put a baseball bat on the back of your head.
Yes. So, and I'll get to that, the aftermath of that. But throughout this process, knowing that you had to have this exit plan, it was temporary, and you knew that afterwards there's going to be severe consequences and people that are going to be threatening your life. Did you communicate this with your family or friends and people closest to you throughout these 2 years and give them the details of what you're involved in so that, in some ways, a lot of people don't, right? So that they can completely protect themselves. They don't even see their family members depending on the severity of the undercover. What was the plan in your case, being able to involve your people?
Yeah, my family was conceptually aware of what I was doing, but they weren't aware of the intimate details. And that was by design. I didn't tell them everything that I was doing or what I was seeing or experiencing because there was no upside to that. Mm-hmm. There was no need for them to know, and there was no benefit for them to know. In the end, I put a huge amount of battle damage on my family for the job I did and for the way I did it. In hindsight, that is my biggest regret. It's my biggest failure. It's my biggest humiliation. Carries the greatest amount of guilt and shame for me personally is that my family made huge sacrifices for me during the course of my career to allow me to work and to do the things I love. And I took that for granted for a long time. And to be honest with you, the people that loved me the most and that I was most loyal to, or that were most loyal to me, I treated the worst. And that's a very unflattering statement to make, but it's a truthful statement.
Why do you think you treated them the worst?
Because I was selfish. I made decisions for myself, what I wanted to do for my career based on where I wanted to go. I didn't consider the repercussions on them or how it would affect them, my wife and my kids. When things eventually did break bad, the pain and suffering and risk and fear and terror that I had brought into their lives was very much undeserved by them.
Is there a part of you that regrets taking that specific role as an undercover agent for infiltrating this?
Yeah, there's parts of it. Not because of the moral or ethical objectives of it, or the investigation of violent crime, or trying to serve my community, serve a greater good, but the after effects of what it did to my family, have been devastating. And I spend every day I can trying to do better and trying to fix those things. There's some things I'll never fix. I'll just never be able to get some of those things right.
Yeah. Is there a part of you that, after all this happened, well, I guess I'm curious to know, like, what happened now that the gangs knows you and they know exactly, you know, I don't know how much was the truth, or was a lot of it was undercover, of course. Is that still a part of your daily life? Is the fear of knowing what can happen to you, knowing after everything that happened?
Yeah, there, you know, when my true identity was exposed, you know, through the courtroom reports and the legal discovery, you know, there were murder contracts issued against me. They were being marketed and shopped to other gangs. The Hells Angels held contracts, the Aryan Brotherhood, the MS-13, LA street gangs, 18th Street, other individuals were looking for opportunities to cash in on the contract. There were threats against my family, threats to kidnap my kids, threats to gang rape my wife. In 2008, my house was burned to the ground.
Oh my God.
So the threats, they're real. But you can't do this job and expect anything less than that. You know, I was associating and dealing with violent people who were very rough and had lived rough lives. They're not going to stop doing that. They're not going to be someone different than who I had known them to be.
So that'll never end, you think? For the rest of your life, you feel?
You know, I think with time, it settles down a little bit. Will they ever forgive me? No. Will there forever be hatred for me? Yes. I don't look for a problem. I don't want a problem. I'll do what I can to avoid problems. But I don't live in fear, because if I live in fear, they won. But I do live with caution because I'm personally aware of what they're capable of and what they're able and willing to do. That they're the masters of violence and intimidation.
I'm curious to know, like, knowing all that, you know, why are you talking to me? Why are you writing books? Why are you going on interviews? And why are you publicizing this information, knowing the real threats of what their potential of?
Well, I got two answers for that. Part of it is that there is no way to hide. In today's world, there is no way to hide. Maybe if you're a CIA operative and they can completely wash who you are out of the system and hide you, maybe. Maybe if you enter the witness security program, which there is no witness security program for law enforcement officers, it's for informants and witnesses. There's no formal mechanism like WITSEC to protect the cop.
That's crazy.
So, you know, I was left on my own. So part of it, like writing my book, was to hide in plain sight, was to like expose the story, get it out there, hopefully cause some pause in the minds of people that intended harm on me or my family. And the second element of it is like, I don't solicit these opportunities. I didn't call you and ask you if I could be on your podcast so I could tell my story. You contacted me.
Totally. No, I'm not saying me specifically. I'm talking more about your decision to really go on the offense, right, of publicizing your book, talking about these stories. And I guess in some ways what you're saying is, instead of hiding, because there is no way to hide, you're going on the offense of being able to share as much as possible, so that in some ways that actually could protect you even further.
Yeah, to some extent. And I try to be honest and truthful and transparent and authentic with it. I'm not out to embarrass anybody.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to humiliate anybody, or I don't have any burning grudge for anybody, any of the people that intended harm for me or did bad things to me. I don't live my life that way.
Yeah.
They might not feel the same way about me. I'm sure they don't. But that's their choice to me.
As a final question, Jay, you know, you've been through so much, and you know, obviously we're so thankful for the services that you've provided, and for your time today. What would you say, just given all the things that you've been through, or some of the lessons that you've learned about life, maybe about yourself, that some of our audience members can take away from?
Yeah, I think personally, like what I've learned many times the hard way, like I'm a person who wisdom always came to me right after I needed it. Right after I needed to be smart about something is when I was smart. It was too late. I learned everything the hard way. But I think we learn, as people, we learn humility by being humiliated. We learn graciousness by being taken advantage of. Sometimes we learn those lessons the hard way. I think as a culture, and I think it's never been more evident than it is today, we don't listen to each other. We are unwilling to change our minds when someone makes a compelling argument to us, when someone makes a compelling statement to us. We've become very set in our positions, and we don't want to change our mind. We don't want to hear what other people's opinions or positions are that are unlike ours. If we can learn to treat each other and take care of each other in a positive way, look out for each other, protect each other, help correct each other when we're going down a bad path. That's maybe too optimistic. I think that's what God would like for us. I look at myself, and I have literally made a million mistakes in my life. I've done a million things wrong. But through God and my wife and my kids and my friends, I've been given 1,000,001 second chances. And I'm very grateful for that. And I do the best I can to take advantage of that 1,000,001st second chance so that I can try to get some things right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, listen, Jay, I think that's a powerful way to close this off. I mean, I couldn't thank you enough for your time, and appreciate you for sharing your story just on behalf of all the people that are listening. It's a very brave thing that you've done and that you're continuing to do. And I think there's a lot of life lessons, as you mentioned, that people can learn from reading your book, No Angel, which is your first and original book, and then your most recent book, Catching Hell. We'll link all of that of the way to get that and your website as well. Thank you so much, Jay. I really appreciate your time.
Very kind. Be well. God bless.